Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If all are ready, we will delve into it, and a few of our colleagues will be joining us shortly. This meeting of the Pontiac City Council on May 23rd, 2024 is called to order at 5:06 p.m. Councilman Parker, any invocation that can be offered?
Yes, sir. It's always a good time to pray. Let us pray. And God, we come here to this day to give you thanks. We thank you, Lord God, for your love, your guidance, your shield of protection, for your grace and your mercy. We ask now, Lord God, as we continue the work that you've called us to do this day, that you would just continue to bless us, keep us, guide and direct our path, that we may make sound and just decisions. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Deputy Clerk.
Carrington. Goodman. James.
Here.
McGinnis.
Here.
Nicholson. Parker.
Here.
Rutherford.
Present.
All right, you have a quorum.
Quorum being established, is there a motion to approve the agenda before us?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilwoman Rutherford, seconded by Councilwoman James. We are here for a special meeting on the budget agenda, so that's what spells out that the department presentations would be as follows. City Clerk's Office, City Council, the City Attorney, Law Department, 50th District Court, and the City Clerk has a high school graduate in their family with some activities this evening, so we want to make sure we get them in and out. But is there any other traffic cop preferences? Does anyone want to defer to another department, or any other department have any time sensitivity in the pecking order? This is your opportunity to say, I've been up since 3 a.m. I only got a few more minutes in the tank. Okay, so hearing nothing further, thank you for your willingness and cordiality, the cordial spirit amongst the respective departments and their leadership. So with that, hearing nothing further discussion on the agenda as proposed, roll call, Deputy Clerk, on adoption of the agenda.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
4 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. We are now at the City Clerk's office. Clerk Doyle, and your respective divisions within your office, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the Office of the City Clerk, the mission of the City Clerk's office is to perform duties as prescribed by federal, state law, and the city charter and ordinances. We have 3 divisions in the clerk's office: the City Clerk General, which consists of serving as the City Council's clerk, the Freedom of Information Act coordinator, and so forth, elections, and marijuana regulations. So we've kind of adopted missions for each of our divisions. The City Clerk General mission is to serve as the official record keeper of the city, clerk of the City Council, Freedom of Information Act coordinator, while providing outstanding customer service to internal and external customers. Elections, the mission of the Elections Division is to conduct voter registration and ensure federal, state, and local elections are conducted timely, responsibly, and with the highest level of professional election standards, accountability, security, and integrity. We are working to ensure that every voter can vote. The marijuana regulations, the mission of the Marijuana Regulations Division is to oversee both the medical and adult use marijuana application and issuance of permit process for the City of Pontiac. The division also administers the social equity programming and ensures applicants and permittees fulfill their community benefit pledges to the residents of the city. This is our organizational chart. So myself as the city clerk, about 2 weeks ago, you approved a new chief assistant clerk who will officially start on June 10th. And then Ms. Grandison and Mr. Starks are both deputy city clerks, and Mary Castro is our election specialist. And we have a vacant program analyst position. So these are the goals of all the divisions combined. We want to, for the upcoming fiscal year, we want to successfully administer the August primary in the November general election, respond to FOIA requests in a timely manner, review marijuana and adult use applications in a timely manner, ensure our marijuana applicants that are issued a permit fulfill their community benefit pledges to the residents, implement the marijuana adult use social equity program, develop the marijuana social equity fund, city council redistricting, educate boards and commissions about the Open Meeting Act and Freedom of Information Act, and pursue professional development opportunities. So a couple things as it relates to our budget in the elections, because each of the divisions are in the budget as basically a separate department. So Department 191 is the elections division. So under other professional services, there is, the department requested $50,000, and the mayor's recommended budget is $40,000, so there's a $10,000 difference. We're requesting that City Council restore the $10,000. This line item will cover our early voting costs for August and November and any costs we incur for City Council redistricting. So we really don't have a total grasp of all of our early voting costs. It was the first time that we did early voting. And then the majority of those costs for the presidential primary were reimbursable. Because it was the presidential primary, with the exception of the local ballot initiative on marijuana. So those costs were not reimbursable, but we are asking for that $10,000 to be restored. The City Council General Budget, Department 215, we're requesting the Charter Commission had its own separate budget in this fiscal year, 23-24. It was zeroed out for the upcoming fiscal year, but as you all know, the Charter Commission ballot proposal, whether the residents will adopt the charter or not, will be on the August ballot. So there is 1 month from July to August that the Charter Commission may need some possible funding to do some community outreach. So we're requesting, because there is still in the City Clerk's Department 215 a Charter Commission line item. So we're requesting $10,000 for that line item. And then in the Marijuana Regulations Department 255 budget, we're requesting a name change just to be in line with the industry. The industry is kind of moving away from marijuana and is now cannabis, so we're requesting that the change to cannabis regulations. There was a salary for the program analysts in this current fiscal year's budget. It was taken out of the upcoming fiscal year's budget, so we're asking for that to be restored. The position was not filled in this current fiscal year because we all know about the hold we had to do on the marijuana due to the different ballot initiatives. So we're requesting for that. The responsibilities of this division will greatly increase. Some of the new responsibilities are social equity programming, social equity fund administration, community benefits monitoring, and adult use marijuana compliance. This is what I'm proposing that the division will look like a regulatory compliance unit, which Mr. Starks will kind of oversee, and then the community benefits and social equity, that will be primarily what the program analysts will handle. With that, concludes my presentation.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you to your staff, to the hardworking staff in the clerk's office, to Mr. Starks, to Ms. Grandison, to Ms. Castro, to yourself, to the election workers that are more short-term or as-needed basis, but they are on the front lines for doing really important work. What is your vision for the filling of the program analyst position? Would you hope to do that early on in the fiscal year, or how would that unfold?
Kind of unfold with the whole timing of the application. I think 2 weeks ago I released the proposed marijuana adult use calendar. So I'm thinking somewhere more around probably September, October. We possibly may have some summer help from a temporary worker who will help me and Mr. Starks with some social equity, but to filling that full-time position, I'm estimating September, October.
Thank you. This city council deliberated and ultimately changed what was in this current year's budget for the Charter Revision Commission so they could have sufficient resources for their operations. I just want to highlight in Department 102 for the Charter Commission, even though the budgeted amount was $122,000, at least through recent months, what has been expended is about $30,000.
Correct.
And that's, the bulk of that is defraying the burden, if you will, the impact that's had on your staff, correct?
Yes.
In terms of staffing and providing resources and minute-taking services for the Charter Revision Commission. So it's an example of, we've in recent days had conversations about fund balance for the city of Pontiac, but then also what's budgeted may look as though we're cannibalizing X amount of dollars. But when you look at when the dust settles towards the end of the fiscal year, in some of these respective budgeted funds, a fraction is utilized.
Yes.
Best intentions, planning for what may come, but based on staffing challenges or positions not filled, that does not necessarily mean that what is budgeted will be fully expended.
Yes.
On that note, what are some examples of your department where budgeted amounts may have been X, but you haven't utilized them fully or needed to? Would the best example of that be staffing for the chief assistant and now program analyst as well, positions that hadn't been utilized?
And in addition to that, with marijuana regulations, all of the potential professional experts, none of those dollars were spent because no review took place.
And that was in department, that would be shown in 255?
Department 255.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Rutherford?
What current programming are we using for FOIA in this city?
As far as software, we're not utilizing any software.
At this time, why has it not been budgeted that we actually purchase the software for FOIA? The reason why I'm asking this is because oftentimes I get complaints about not you, but for example, the Oakland Press has been waiting for a FOIA for 4.5 months, and they've done the proper protocol, the proper research. They still haven't got their FOIA, and so then they send an email to me as a councilwoman. I cannot respond, so I'm asking how to speed this up. Then we'll get another individual who calls and said they've been asked, they've issued and then reissued, and then we end up getting sued, which is currently about to happen because we don't answer FOIA requests. So what programming is this? Are we going to get in to improve this?
So that's really not a programming issue. What that is an issue of, it is a lack of response. The clerk's office serves as the FOIA coordinator for the city.
Right.
So we receive a FOIA request. We then send that request to the appropriate department, whoever it's pertaining to. They have 5 days to respond. If they cannot respond within 5 days, then we can ask for an extension, a 10-day extension. So after that 10-day extension, if we haven't responded, it's not because of the clerk's office, it's because of the department has failed to respond to us. We continue to send reminders to the department that we are awaiting responses, so I'm saying software would not fix
So the real
that
issue
problem.
is that it's not being responded from the administration. So that's why I asked whether it's a software thing. So maybe if that was the issue, then we could correct that. But clearly it's not. It's just if they're not responding, correct? Would that be a fair assessment?
That would be a fair assessment.
All right, thank you.
Well, there's more layers to it. Legally, there may be a legal interpretation about whether the information exists or is able to be shared legally. There are some layers to some of these requests.
And that is true, too. But if we can't respond if we don't have the information, then the response is the information does not exist. The person who has requested the information would have a right to appeal. They would actually appeal to the mayor, and then the mayor would have to respond. Or if it's some legal issue as to what has to be redacted, then we work with the city attorney to do that. But if that's the case, we communicate with whoever the requester is and inform them of that.
So your assessment is that
Go ahead.
your assessment is that you have the resources at this point to be able to coordinate Freedom of Information Act requests.
Yes.
I think it would be beneficial for City Council if you want to give us sort of a broad level number of requests that you receive in a fiscal or calendar year, which, what are the ones that are especially stale or that take longer, so that way we can assess those questions and look at other policy or procedural matters that we need to investigate even beyond just budgetary matters. Next on the speakers list was Councilwoman James.
Yes, my question is going to the Charter Commission, Department 102. What is the current, I know that when they started out, we did provide a budget for them. Where are they in relation to that budget? Because you said you're asking for an additional $30,000 so that they can complete the work for the August election.
So to clarify,
Is there any money in the budget that they currently have, is what I'm asking?
yes, there is. So if you look at the budget, they were actually allocated $122,383. They've only spent, according to this, which I think was maybe slightly more at May when the budget was released, they only spent $30,000. But the way that the budget works is that at the end of the fiscal year, any unused money is returned back to the general fund. So they still do have the opportunity to expend funds for the duration of May and in June, but if they want to spend any money in July, they would need some type of budget allocation. But as the president had mentioned, they've only spent a fraction of their budget. In the bulk of that expenditure has actually been, Ms. Grandison has been serving as the clerk for the Charter Commission. So currently in this fiscal year, 50% of her salary is assigned to the Charter Commission's budget.
Okay, all right, I see.
And outside of that, they've spent some money for legal services. I think they've possibly maybe up to about $10,000 in legal services, which helped to finalize the charter. Because as you all may be aware, the charter, they put together the charter, then the governor, by state law, has to sign off on the charter. So it goes to the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office does a review, and in this case went back and forth with the Charter Commission's outside attorney to finalize the document, which the governor approved. And then 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, this honorable body put the issue on the ballot.
Councilwoman Rutherford.
Oh, great. So the reason why I'm asking, what's the exact timeline does it take for people to do FOIAs? Like, you say it's 7 day. Is it is 6 months normal for that to happen? And that's why I'm asking, is there software, is there anything else we could do to improve this issue so that I don't keep getting contacted about it? From your opinion, because we want to make sure you know. So can you answer that for me, please?
So like I mentioned before, legally, we have 5 days to respond. We can request an extension for 10 additional days, but we should be responding within that time frame.
Okay.
And in the instance that was raised, a response has been given, although the requester contests the nature of the response.
And this,
So if they request if they have a problem with the response that has been given, then they can appeal. And in this case, they appeal to the mayor, and then the mayor would grant or deny their
Is there a
appeal.
time frame in which the mayor's appeal has to be reconciled?
I'm not sure that there's an exact.
You can look in, you and the city attorney can look into that and give an answer to city council.
Yes, right.
It's okay, you don't know that offhand. Any further follow-ups, Councilwoman Rutherford?
no, I just wanted to make sure, well, I do. The other thing, the $10,000 that they want to cut out the budget, and their purpose for that is budget cuts. But can you explain, you explained it on online, you had it up there about why we need to restore it, but wouldn't it be easier for them to cut it from other departments, whereas it cut it for ours, so that we can have all this capacity that we need, in your opinion?
I don't want to give my
Okay,
opinion about
it's just your
other
opinion.
departments or something, but in the issue of the clerk's office, like I said, we only had early voting for one time, the presidential primary. As we all know, a
Which is
fraction.
lower volume.
Right, fraction of people. So only vote, and it was the very first time, so most people were unaware of early voting. Although we did send out postcards, the clerk also did a voter guide or sample ballot as well too. But voter volume will increase for the primary and will definitely increase for the general election.
Between now and, in the next 10 days, would you be able to interface with the leadership of the Charter Revision Commission and find out what final outreach expenses there may be?
Okay.
Because it may be that they are fully housed within June. If there's going to be any communication or any activities, it might be June expenditures. Okay. And if that's the case, then we wouldn't necessarily need to entertain that particular budget amendment further. It'd just be good to know what the cadence that they were planning on.
Okay.
Councilwoman James, followed by Councilman, I'm sorry, Mayor Grima, you also had a hand. You'll come on the scene now if you're up for it.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to amplify your point, President McGinnis, that in the context of the Oakland Press, they sent a FOIA request. We responded to that FOIA request and informed them that we did not possess the document they were seeking. They appealed. We answered their appeal and reaffirmed that. And they don't like that answer. They want us to be responsible for obtaining something that we do not have in our possession.
Councilwoman James?
Yeah, I have a question on your budget for the request for a program analyst. Could you just tell us what that position is all about, what that person's responsibilities would be?
So I'll go back to right here. So I mentioned once we implement adult use marijuana, this is what I'm proposing that division to look like: regulatory compliance, and then community benefits and social equity. So the program analyst will be primarily handling the community benefits and social equity unit for the division. Because again, with adult use,
I'm trying to understand so the program would be the community benefits and social equity program, but the analysis, what is it that person is going to be doing? I mean, just the title of the role is kind of confusing.
okay, maybe it's the title. So they will be overseeing our social equity, which we will be coming back to the council in a few weeks. We're working with the outside city attorney, Mr. Murphy. But as a part of the adult use ordinance, the city council has to approve a social equity program. And then in addition to that, I believe it was Councilman Goodman asked for a social equity fund to be established as well too. So that position would kind of oversee the social equity program, social equity fund, and then as it relates to medical marijuana and adult use, their community benefits. So community benefits will need to be monitored as well too.
Councilman Parker?
Yeah, we just hired an assistant chief clerk. What would be their role?
Their
As you're asking for another person, could that person pick up some of what you're asking for with it?
No. So the chief assistant clerk will be serving as my chief deputy. So they will be responsible for elections. They'll be responsible for overseeing the FOIA process. They'll be helping with the city council redistricting effort. She'll have little interaction with marijuana regulations.
And they aren't necessarily new positions, they're new in practicality, but it's been in the current budget, correct? For
Correct.
both the chief assistant clerk and the program analyst. Chief assistant clerk is coming online again, it'll be fulfilled once more.
Right.
At the tail end of this current fiscal year, but the program analyst, it's been in the budget, just not filled.
Right.
Position's not been filled, in part because of the purgatory of challenges to the administration of adult use.
Correct.
And
Yes,
other marijuana.
because of the referendum. It made no sense to hire somebody for a position, and basically they were not going to have any work because of the referendum.
Any follow-up, Councilman Parker, to that line of
No,
question?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Pro Tem Carrington, followed by
Actually,
Deputy Mayor. That answered it.
Councilman Parker actually asked the question I was planning on
Very
asking.
good. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Council President. At the risk of being overly redundant, the program analyst was erroneously taken out of the budget because it had not been fulfilled, and there was a thought that it was not going to be fulfilled. It was lack of communication, just pure communication, poor communication. It never should have been taken out. It is our stance that absolutely should be restored.
Any further discussion as it relates to the clerk's office, the elections division, marijuana regulations division? The clerk's office is rare to generate budget amendments throughout the year. It's been a lot of stability, and we appreciate the thought and intentionality that you put into your budget process. Obviously, the one asterisk to that was when further staffing reorganization needed to happen, of course. But as always, please let us know throughout the fiscal year if there's any adjustments that need to be made. The City Council feels very strongly that the administration of free, fair, and crazy-free elections would be great in the city of Pontiac with the maximum amount of citizen participation in both August and November. There would be no other, at least currently anticipated elections this fiscal year, correct?
Right, yeah, that's it.
Obviously, that is contingent on if there's any referendum or other moves that would prompt it, but nothing that is expected at this point.
Right, the only time that it could be up would be May of 2025, if.
Or February. It'd be very unlikely, but there could always be, if a school district prompts something or a government entity prompts it, but nothing is scheduled otherwise.
Correct.
Okay. Councilman Parker.
So as you talked about, is redistricting going to take place before the general election or after?
Probably after the general election, but it needs to take place in this current fiscal year because the City Council, your honorable body, will have to ultimately decide on the redistricting, and then it would take effect come January of 2026.
Okay. So the X factor in part is the charter outcome, correct?
Correct, yes.
So that'll be determinative with the outcome in the August election, because if it were not to be successful, the composition of the 7-member, we'll have to work through that in terms of how the timeline works. But
yes,
I think the big X factor right now is
Still the charter.
one, what is the will of the people? And will that change the composition or, the number of council or how they're elected? And then two, which the city council has already prompted the city attorney to ask the impact question, is the timing of that. Like if that is ratified and chosen by the people, we need to know, so that way we do our duty, because we have to ultimately adopt the redistricting of council lines, no matter when they take effect. The council does that,
yes,
but we need professional assistance from the clerk's office, ideally in collaboration with Oakland County, and their software systems has been helpful in past redistricting cycles for the city. Any final questions on the city clerk's office and their respective divisions? Congratulations on your child's graduation from high school, and we wish you and your family the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're now at City Council. Our Chief of Staff, Sharika Hawkins, will present. And we're looking at Department 101, front-loaded at the front.
Good evening to the residents of Pontiac, this honorable. Sorry. Good evening to the residents of Pontiac, the Honorable Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and the Honorable Council and the City Clerk. This evening, City Council has a relatively simplistic budget that I will go over. The main mission of the City Council is to provide strong local government that is proactive in responding to the community needs and delivers quality public service to our residents, business, and stakeholders. Earlier in the year, the City Council did identify 5 legislative goals, which was housing affordability and housing plan of action, workforce development plan and implementation, youth recreation construction and effective programming, American Rescue funding usage, and community emergency response plan and serving. So if you take a look at our organizational chart, the council had budgeted 3 positions, and all of those positions are full. The first position would be myself as the Chief of Staff. The second position is for James McQueen, who is here tonight. He's our outreach specialist. And then our administrative assistant, Angelita Santiago. One of the goals of the council also has been to be more strategic in fine-tuning our subcommittee meetings and measuring their effectiveness. along with this council believing in strategic and responsible budgeting. So we've looked at also community outreach, which each council district has now been regularly having their city council district meetings, and we have been having an increased community presence with that. We also want to bridge the gap to services for all of our residents. One of the key things that City Council did do this year is that we do have a bilingual person on our staff that both can read, write, and speak in Spanish. So that has helped us with some of the blind spots that we've had in the community. So if you want to look at our overall budget, we did start to budget, and we, for our own purposes, we did cut our professional services down to show that we are committed to effective and responsible budgeting. Furthermore, one of our larger increased budget items is that the City Council actually pays for the financial audit, and we do have a contract with Haven, so that's projected to go up to, I believe, $15,000. So you'll see a increase in the audit compliance fee of our budget, and that increase will be about 15%, but I believe the deputy mayor may be able to speak on that, but it was an added scope of services for that increase. So that would be one of the larger increases that you would actually see in our current budget. If there are any questions, I would love to entertain them and to answer them to the best of my ability.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much to the hard work of the City Council team. Thank you for acknowledging Mr. McQueen, Ms. Santiago, and we want to acknowledge yourself. Thank you for all the hard work you've done to continue to improve the effectiveness and professionalism of the City Council operations. The budget demonstrates that we continue to want to have district project initiatives for each of the City Council's respective districts. They've been making a positive difference in our community, and we still want to make that ongoing investment prompted and spearheaded by City Council members. And with that, council members that wish to have further discussion on our council budget, Pro Tem Carrington.
Thank you, President McGinnis. On the miscellaneous expenses, what is that line item used for?
That line item is usually used for, case in point, if you look behind you, a miscellaneous expenses, the blinds that, so miscellaneous things that fall under City Council purview. So the blinds for here, the blinds in the City Council conference room, any upgrades that we may need would fall under that type of miscellaneous expense.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And I got one more question.
Okay, go for it.
Concerning district projects, how are the council doing with us getting and meeting those particular projections of what to spend per council?
The projections are all over the board. You have some council districts that have spent their allocated amount. Some have more than 90% to spend. So the spectrum is all over the place depending on the specific district and the project. But I do know that there has been a focus on making sure that we implement responsible district projects to get that money spent before the end of the fiscal year.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And it is subdivided by GL account for respective districts. So District 1 and 7 is going strong, making sure that we're utilizing our funds, but there's still a good month and a half. I know that there are a number of projects that council members are working on with staff's assistance processing through. Most recently, the treadmills at Ruth Peterson Senior Center, a District 6 project.
And we also want to give kudos to our finance department, as last year when those district projects were rolled out, it was just one GL, so it was kind of hard to track. But due to their due diligence, they were able to put all 7 GLs in each district, so we know exactly which district is spending and how much. So I want to thank the finance team for that change.
And then finally, Pro Tem Carrington, you asked about the miscellaneous expenses with that GL number. It shows that we budgeted just under $14,000, and what we've spent so far, at least what's been booked, is just under $10,000. And so the budget change slightly would put it at $15,000 for the year, but we're making effective use of those funds rather than just it being on paper. It's actually being implemented. Councilwoman Rutherford.
In the event that city council members have money left over, will it roll over to next year as far as for community projects?
That would be a question we would have to talk to see if we adhere to all the budgetary components of that. So we would talk to administration about that to make sure we're in line for that rollover.
Second question, at any timeline, do you see us getting My Champ or any other programming that we all can utilize so that we can best assist, so improvement on how we...
Right. So with the MailChimp, that's something we can do. We've been in conversation about that, but there is a minimum number of emails that you need to start that and continue to have content with that. So that would be one of our priorities moving in the next fiscal year.
All right. And lastly, Outreach does an amazing job. Does Outreach have all the resources that it needs? So, for example, when Mr. McQueen came into office, we had this list of resources that we have. Is there at any timeline do you see us using more money in outreach because we get those cases that come to us like people that's going through homelessness or better connections so that people are more connected? Can we improve on the budget or expand it? Do you see that would be an issue?
Well, we just have to make sure that we're in compliance and doing what a city can do in some of our outreach. So as you know, when council adopted the position of the outreach coordinator, we were in the first trimester, if you will. Now we're in the, James, you've been here 3 months, so what's that, the second trimester? We're in the second trimester, so we're still learning and we're still have a heartbeat to what the city needs. So as we continue to get more information, we'll be more willing to say what the greater need is, and we will put the resources behind that to be most effective as possible.
And thank you for all that you do. I appreciate you.
Any final discussion on City Council's budget, Department 101? Obviously, our commitment to the taxpayers of Pontiac is to use our limited time to do the most effective job possible, fulfilling our roles and improving our community as much as possible. And we try to do that creatively, but also very cost effectively. In our budget is what the city's Pride and Beautification Awards, which we've continued to improve and hone, and I want to thank the city's council staff for the work on that. That's reflected in this budget as well, even though we didn't verbalize on it as much. You won't see it say Pride and Beautification as a line item, but under city events.
City events and miscellaneous, that will come out. And shameless plug, nominations are open for Pride and Beautification. We did upgrade. We want to thank our communication team for the ability to upload photos also when we're nominating. And we will also have the Pride and Beautification reception. I do believe that'll be August 15th at Golner Wash, 4 to 7 p.m.
So again, as of now, finally, it's launched this year's Pride and Beautification. So essentially, think of it as Memorial Day to just before the 4th of July. The end of June is when deadline for nominations for yourself or your neighbors or a neighboring business. We encourage everyone to participate. We have moved it up a little bit this year, and the celebration will fall earlier as well this year. Right. Councilwoman Rutherford.
You just stated that it closes out after 4th of July, so
just before, I'm sorry. I was being too glib just in case people remember. Between Memorial Day and 4th of July, roughly, is our window, but June 30th.
Do we have a timeline when the signs will be in?
The signs will be in by the end of this fiscal year, so we are planning on having those signs on June 30th.
Thank you. I just wanted you to say it out loud so the people heard it in the back.
Any final discussion? All right, we'll continue on behalf of the citizens of Pontiac to keep trying to make good use of the resources, the limited resources, to effectively serve them as their legislative body.
Thank you again for your time and the residents and everyone. And yes, thank you.
Thank you. We are now at the Law Department and City Attorney Joanne Gurley. You are up.
Good evening, council members. Good evening, everyone. I'm Joanne Gurley. As President McGinnis said, I'm the law director, and this is my first budget hearing with this honorable body. So the city attorney's office derives the majority of their powers from Article 4, Chapter 2 of the of the city charter. Put my glasses But the mission here is to provide sound legal advice and counsel to city officials, to represent and defend the city in all lawsuits, and to prosecute local ordinance violators. And those are just a small synopsis of the city attorney's powers. The organizational chart listed here shows myself as the law director, and I manage outside legal counsel. And then the change that I'm asking for next fiscal year is a reorganization in the sense that a legal assistant would be hired and then also an in-house attorney. With those two positions, it should reduce the costs that we spend on outside counsel. Some of the major changes that occurred since I've been here and since November of 23, we've added new staff. The addition of new staff members would reduce the cost of outside legal counsel, as I just stated. It would increase the speed and capacity of our legal staff to process work orders and then to establish a process for collecting FOIA fee requests in accordance with state law. The highlights for 23-24 would be that the contracts have been reviewed internally. There are a lot of questions that come up daily about various contracts, and having someone in-house to sift through the questions and to gather the information has been valuable. We've created a resolution template to try to formalize the resolutions that come before City Council. And then the resolution submission process has been created and refined, and adding a legal assistant would definitely help streamline this process. And that legal assistant would do some of the preliminary work, asking questions that summarily need to be answered, some of the basic questions. For fiscal year 24-25, the goals would be to create a more central point of contact for outside counsel. Right now, we are in communication a lot, but now they know exactly who to come to for various questions that they have. We would like to increase the response time to internal questions. The fact that there's only me right now can add additional time to answering questions. And then we have an ideal of a resolution workflow changes. And so that would encompass making sure that the resolutions are submitted in a timely manner, and also making sure that it contains the information necessary for City Council to understand what the resolution is actually requesting. Another goal is to have software compatibility under our contract auditing process. Right now, we have a lot of contracts and software that seem to overlap, and so one of my goals is to try to see how all this intermingles, and if there's a necessity for all of the different contracts that we do have. And lastly, the renewals of contracts is something that I'd like to look into. We have a number of contracts that have automatic renewals. And so given that the automatic renewal could be anywhere from a year to 3 years, we need to make sure that it's meeting the city's purposes and that we don't need to terminate, we don't need to shorten the initial term. So those are things that I'd like to also accomplish. And that is the end of my presentation. I welcome any and all questions.
Thank you. So your department, is it an explicitly general fund expense, or is it a standalone separate fund or budget?
From my understanding, it's a general fund expenditure.
Okay. So Department 266, attorney. All right. Councilman Rutherford.
To the administration, currently, how much have we spent out with Clark Hill versus how much we spent with her as our in-house attorney? The actual number. I yield to the deputy.
Unless Joanne happens to have that with her, we don't have that exact number tonight.
Can you at least share what GL number would it be reflected? There are legal services, 101-266-804.018. There is legal services prosecutions, legal services MTT, legal services code enforcement, legal services lawsuits, legal services medical marijuana. What is the, you are our legal traffic cop in terms of where it's flowing.
Yeah.
So obviously, legal services prosecutions, would that be fair to say that would be the Kelly Law Firm? It's primarily in the district court, and that fund would, at least for their length of service, would reflect the Kelly firm?
That's correct.
Okay.
So for the regular legal services, that GL is 101-266-804.01. No, sorry, 804.000 for legal services.
It looks like now it's
sorry.
.018.
.018.
So the activity, I got it. So the activity for 2022 to 2023, the city spent $695,600 to those firms. Would that be a fair assessment?
Might have been different firms.
But, okay, so we can't break outside firms other than yourself. We spent $695,600, correct?
In 22-23.
22-23.
And 21-22, it was 160,000, although it was then broken down by prosecutions.
Right.
23-24, so far this year, it looks to be 514,000.
And now you guys want to do 691,900 for the projection?
Are you expecting that with the balance of this fiscal year, it's going to get closer to what it had been the previous fiscal year, once you pay out or reconcile the rest of the invoices? Or are you expecting that this year will be lower than the previous fiscal year and the one to come?
Yeah, I think it will be at least what it was for 23-24.
So it's going to be 695,600. So what was the point of us bringing in-house if we're going to spend this much money outsourced? I'm just not to, this is a question to the administration, because I'm asking for a reason. So in 2023, 2024, because you asked us to read the right line items, it was $514,457. How much of that was spent? Like, I'm not understanding how we can justify spending that amount of money. How many lawsuits are we currently in? Why is this happening? And why does this number keep increasing? So I yield to the administration. Oh, Michael, you have to yield to him.
Who wants it, mayor or deputy mayor?
They can answer.
Thank you, Council President.
Okay.
So that is a wonderful question, Councilwoman. The administration would contend that had we not brought Joanne on, we would not be looking currently at $514,457,000 in activity, but that number would be higher. There is a large amount of work that Joanne personally has taken on that would have otherwise been outsourced. Additionally, Joanne has done an amazing job of cutting down on the interbillings between law firms. So anytime we have more than one law firm working on an item, they actually were billing each other back and forth for the time that they spent talking to one another. That is something that Joanne has stepped in and cut down on. And so as you've seen in her request, she has said, hey, I would like to further expand the internal law department. And we did not currently put that into salaries and wages, because the idea is that we would take some of that out of the legal services and move it up. But we are still working out the kinks of, okay, exactly what is the price that would be and when we would bring that person on board, because we have to figure out where we would sit them first. So that would be the response.
We got a few people on the speakers list.
Well, okay.
The question that I want to make sure I answer before, when did you start? What was your start date?
November 20th of 2023.
Okay, so you came in mid-fiscal, this current fiscal year.
Yes.
The last fiscal year, outside legal services, just under $700,000. Prosecutions, almost $250,000. What is Legal Services MTT reference? What is the acronym of MTT? A Michigan Tax Tribunal, okay. And then Legal Services Medical Marijuana, last year was $13,005. It was budgeted $100,000 for this year. None has been at least booked to that. Is that because the marijuana legal services is expanding beyond just medical marijuana? Or what's the financial thought process about why that's probably showing up under outside legal services and not an explicit standalone separate? Or is that something about the processing of marijuana applications? It's okay if you don't have the answer offhand, but just trying to understand the nuance of what would go under the broader bucket of outside legal services versus the marijuana lawsuit.
So from what I've seen, the outside legal counsel, when they submit their bills, if they are doing work pertaining to marijuana, it's just coming out of the legal budget. It's not being separated and taken out of that particular line item. So if city clerk has questions that they have pertaining to marijuana and we get a legal bill pertaining to marijuana, it just comes out of this budget.
Okay. We'll want to, in the coming months, drill down on that further to understand the nuance there. Mm-hmm. The City Council has previously asked for a report on what is sort of within that outside legal services. How's that shaking out? You know, what's the peaks and valleys of the exact costs with respective firms, because there are different legal cases or legal work that they are doing. So I'm really grateful that you've been able to provide to the City Council, now that you are the law director, a regular update on all the pending litigation. And we just want to take that a step further and understand the cost implications of utilizing outside legal counsel.
Okay.
So you have said what to be more effective, the law department needs an in-house legal assistant and another in-house attorney. That's not currently baked into the proposed budget, correct?
Not per se, but as Deputy Mayor stated, it would be taken out of the legal budget.
So it would be a prospective budget amendment should that, once the research has been done about what the cost would be. Is that the vision that the administration has? Mayor?
Yeah, I think we want to make sure that it will actually save money and actually reduce the outside legal budget by at least as much as the cost of bringing those positions in-house. But also, as the deputy mayor said, we really have a shortage of space at City Hall as we've increased our hiring, and so we want to make sure that we have room to accommodate the staff. But also, as I said, we want to actually do a little bit more homework and make sure it actually makes sense. The other thing I would note in terms of the impact on outside legal expenses of Director Gurley's arrival is the fact that, as you noted, she's been here about 7 of the 12 months of the fiscal year, once the next month concludes. And so she came about 5 months into the fiscal year. But also, and I think this is a really important point, that the legal services are driven by a lot of different dynamics, including various matters that arise. So it's not as simple as, well, there's only one factor to consider, and that's Director Gurley's arrival 5 months into the fiscal year. But I can tell you that she's taken on a lot of cases and matters, I should say, not actual litigation cases, but a lot of matters that otherwise would have fallen to outside counsel and have been very expensive to manage.
Councilwoman James?
Yes. I agree. I really have appreciated, having an in-house counsel person that's been able to come directly when called to the meetings and answer questions that have come up for counsel. My question, though, is I thought the legal assistant was in the proposed budget that you guys presented for 23-24. So I'm thinking that the in-house recommendation was not in the proposed budget, but I thought legal assistant was.
It was not.
It was not in the proposed budget that we got on, May 1st?
That is correct. We did not include that specific position. We are, again, one, we have a spacing issue. Two, we are looking at making sure that bringing on these new positions are actually going to make the cost savings that we are looking for. So the idea was that those costs would come out of the outside legal services. But three, we are also looking at how to specifically fill that position, dealing with a lot of moving parts internally.
Okay, well, just as a comment, a legal assistant could ideally work remotely. So just kind of keep that in mind. They can be extremely effective in a remote capacity. So that's all.
Yes, how much of the $691,900 have we spent on current lawsuits with the GERS and VIVA? Out of that $691,900, how much did we spend out of that? Because see, what I don't like is when people say it's the magnitude of things. A majority of this was spent on one thing. I just want to know what it was spent on, so I can better understand how we explain to our constituents why we're spending almost $1 million on lawsuits. Because it's almost it's more than 500,000. 500,000 is half of a million, so now it's 691,900. I just want somebody to explain to me how we got to that number. I don't want to hear it's the dynamics of a whole bunch of different lawsuits. I get that. The lawsuits that we're facing I want to know how much was spent specifically on what we spent last year on GERS going to court. Just GERS. Could someone tell me just GERS?
And that might be a pretty straightforward question if you don't have it in front of you, because it's two specific firms that aren't necessarily in the primary day-to-day lawsuits. So Mayor Brown, I'll yield to you on answering the councilman's question.
Yeah, so we can certainly answer that question. I don't have the number in front of me. I am interested to know, as we answer that question and provide that information to council, whether you're interested specifically in the lawsuit against the VIBA, or whether you're also interested in the expenses involved in negotiating the revised settlement agreement with Cypria. Those are two different things. One was an actual lawsuit. The other was negotiations to restore the $400 monthly stipend.
My rebuttal will be this. I'm interested in how many times he went to court to get to the point where we as a council agreed to actually restore it. So I want to know what we spent before we as a council stopped you from going to court on going to court. That's what I want to know. Okay. Yeah, that's what I want to know. He asked, so I answered.
I know, but
okay. I'm just, yeah.
So it should be pretty straightforward. You can delineate the two. It will give us a comprehensive number, but also will give the nuance on what's negotiation versus lawsuit. Mayor Brown.
Yeah, I also just want to note that based on the numbers that I've heard tonight, the $691,000 was not this fiscal year. That was last fiscal year, from 2022 to 2023. And this fiscal year, actually, we're tracking below $600,000 in expenditures so far. So that's another piece of evidence that Director Gurley has actually reduced the expense of outside counsel thus far, if the numbers that I believe I heard earlier are accurate.
It is what is stated, but I had asked the question of the law director on where we think it would, when the dust settles on the fiscal year, and they anticipated it would be on par with last year's and on par with the year that you've asked for to come, which is also in the 690s range. But I'll note that last fiscal year, it was 690 plus 245,000 for prosecutions, and that looks like it's tracking dramatically lower. So I don't know if that's about timing of when the costs are going to be booked, you know, the invoice payments will be booked, but the Finance and Personnel Department will definitely want to, I shouldn't say department, the Finance and Personnel Subcommittee is going to want to find some more detail on that as you and the Finance Department can provide it. But I know Law in the Courts is also going to be curious as a subcommittee about the broader question of effectiveness of internal legal services versus external legal services, the cost savings, but also the effectiveness of representing the city well, advancing the interests of the citizens and taxpayers of Pontiac. So we're going to need more information in our respective council research and review duties. Councilwoman, anyone for a first time? Councilwoman Rutherford.
You currently don't have your own office, correct?
I have an area where I'm at daily.
I said an office, like you say legal, you have. So if I had a domestic violence situation and you guys, as a city, prosecute domestic, if it's a city citizen, correct?
Say that again?
So let's say I had a domestic violence issue.
Okay.
And it happened in Pontiac. And you decide if the case goes to court or not, correct?
No.
I'm asking, I'm just asking for clarity.
Right, no, that would be a prosecution by the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who's our, okay.
And that would be handled by the Kelly Law Firm?
That's
That
what
would
I'm
be
asking.
held, yes.
And so they would not be meeting with a prospective,
Not here in the city. They most likely would meet over in the district court.
okay. So we can ask when we review their budget, what's
Yes.
the space accommodations for
That's
them?
what I wanted to know about your accommodation. Then that was it. I know what you
But
need.
so you're presently in City Hall on second floor, executive?
I'm in the
adminis-
mayor's area,
Okay,
executive office, right between the mayor and the deputy.
okay. Mayor Grundle?
Well, and I'm no expert on criminal law, but I think a lot of those kinds of cases are handled not by the city at all or our outside counsel, but rather by the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. So some of that depends on the level at which it is charged, but a lot of what our Kelly Law Firm handles in terms of prosecutions are civil infractions, speeding tickets, blight tickets, things of that. Now, we may also handle some misdemeanors, but
Yes.
sometimes, depending on the severity of the criminal offense, it is handled by the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. So it gets even more complicated in terms of where that line is drawn. Is that fair?
That is fair, and we do have the court here as well. So as you stated, if there's a domestic violence case, it is prosecuted by the city, though, on behalf of the people.
Any further, you want to answer it again a different way? All right, an answer again from the administration.
No, I just want to make clear something that may have been lost in the translation. Director Gurley does have her own office with a door that closes and has privacy. We converted a conference room into an office for her.
So when the budget itself comes up, we will want to have the breakdown provided to city council of the respective, at least, of what's been paid out so far per law firm. And so that would be very helpful for us in getting a scope of what the outside legal counsel, which is a substantial line item every year. I mean, so this is and we anticipate in the course of business, the municipality will continue to have substantial legal expenses, period. So we want to make sure that we are as fully apprised as possible so that way we can budget appropriately and see what's in the best interest of the taxpayers. Okay.
Absolutely.
Any final discussion on the law department and the city attorney? Department of one and traffic cop for contractors of many in terms of respective legal counsel. How many firms are there currently that you are interfacing to some smaller or substantial degree?
There are 3. I interface with 2 regularly.
And then occasionally there'd be smaller ones, like if there's insurance matters where the sort of the insurance pool fund assigns attorneys with different law firms. Would that be fair to say you might have limited interaction, but the city has different law firms that it's paid for from the city's coverage?
That is true, but also if we have training expenses that may come from a law firm, a smaller one-time fee or an investigation. So normally there are 2 law firms that I'm regularly in contact with, 2 that the city, additional 2 that the city uses for more specialized cases. And then, of course, if we have investigations or training that we need to engage with.
Okay. Well, I'm very grateful that you are serving the citizens of Pontiac and you are the city attorney, and I'm grateful that you have an office with a door. Is there any final discussion for the law department?
You do an amazing job in really, really not amazing circumstances, and I'll say that publicly. That's it.
Thank you.
The city council wholeheartedly agrees, although that comment was out of order since I didn't recognize you. But amen. Anything final? Hearing nothing final, we are at number 4 on the agenda, the 50th District Court, the illustrious District Court, shows up for Fund 276. The Honorable Cynthia T. Walker and your administrator are here for some budget action.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council, for hearing us this evening. I'm turning the presentation over to our Court Administrator, Lynette Ward, who will go through that, and then we're both available for any questions that there may be.
Good evening. Good evening.
Thank you very much for having us here this evening to go through what we hope is a very positive experience budget-wise. The first thing, that's not me. Okay. That's a good place to leave it. Our mission statement is to provide a safe, accessible, efficient, and impartial system of justice. One thing that we have, our judges have done an amazing job of is reaching out to the community that we serve. You may have heard about our warrant clinics. They have been a raging success. Judge Walker has been the fundamental person at the court pushing that, and the judges that we have love it. It gets them an opportunity to interact with citizens in an atmosphere that's not as intimidating as a court. We also look at efficiencies. When we start looking at efficiencies, one of the big problems we have, and we've had for some years, is that we don't have enough employees. We are at least short 6 clerks. We have an opening for a chief probation officer. Unfortunately, my deputy court administrator is retiring. And combine that with the everyday work and the different projects that the state has put on us, it's almost traumatic sometimes. Our employees are so dedicated. And when I look at their dedication, I start to think about how easy it would be for them to go somewhere else. If we start looking at just the county courts that are near us, we don't pay near enough. And it is our daily fear that somebody's going to come and say, I'm going over to one of the 52 courts. So we try to make sure that we do the best we can for them. It's really, really important to us that they understand that they are part of this justice system as well as anything else. One of the things that I'd like to highlight is that we just got an email yesterday afternoon that our court is going to become one of my courts, and we will have a paperless system for our civil department. That's a big deal. It's going to help the citizens. It's going to help the employees. We're looking forward to it moving things really a lot smoother and a lot quicker. And it's going to cost a little money, but in the end, the state is bearing much of the cost, but some of the equipment we will have to get. Everyone will have to have double monitors and those type of things. But we are really, really looking forward to that progression. We have one judge who says he is going to go down fighting, bringing us into the 21st century as far as technology. When I'm looking at the budget, I do have a concern with the amount. I'd like to look first, I guess, at healthcare. It appears that the healthcare, the administration is looking to reduce that by $42,000. If you look at 2023, 2024, we were at $374,949. This current budget has been amended for $388, and I'm not sure how to take $42,000 from that. When we start looking at the fact that insurance everywhere is increasing, we have a very minimal number of people insured, and I'd like to say we'd like X number of dollars more, but we haven't gotten that information back from the provider yet. We will be starting a new enrollment within the next few weeks, and during that time, we will get that information. The other big item that really comes to mind is other professional services. Because we don't have enough resources, people-wise, we have to go outside of the court to bring in professionals to help us. One of those professionals is a visiting judge. We have a visiting judge, I believe, a day and a half a week. That judge has to have a court recorder. So looking at the expenses just for them over the last year, right now, I believe we're close to in our interpreters, and that's the other big amount. That's the really big amount. We have found that the languages are becoming a little fancier, if you want to call it that. We've gone beyond Spanish, beyond French. We've got, I think it was Uzbekian? Yes. So there's a set amount that we pay interpreters per hour with a 2-hour minimum. So if they come there for 5 minutes and the case is over, they still get that 2-hour minimum. So what we're looking at right now approximately is our interpreters for this year appear to be close to $50,000. The cleaning company, we also pay out of that account. That's over $4,000 each month. That is $48,000. For the visiting judge, last year I believe it was $35,000, and this year it's coming up on $30,000. For the court recorder, that's $20,000. We also have other sub-court recorders that come in for judges when their court recorder is sick or has to be out of the office. Our court officers, last year we engaged with a company so that we could get less deadly weapons. They all have guns, but we have found that a lot of people are more afraid of tasers than they are guns. And ours were outdated, and we actually got some more of those. And we pay a amount because they're electronic, they have to be charged, they have to be serviced. Every so often, the officers have to be certified in using them. So we pay a service fee every year to this company for about $4,000. Our recording equipment, we paid for the equipment. It's great, it's working well, but we also have to pay a maintenance fee on that. So because it's technology-based, they may have to come in and update the software. They come in, if we have any problems with the hardware, they deal with that also. So in looking at that, just those 5 areas, we're well over we're right up against 200,000 right now. I expect that the interpreter fees are going to rise. For a long time, we paid them the lowest of any court in Oakland County. What's really critical about that is, one, we have to enable people to be able to use the court. They are in such high demand now because not only do they go to court, but they also are on Zoom. So we haven't had a raise. They haven't had a raise in the amount that we pay them, or even the amount that we rose up to be equitable with everybody else, in about 4 years now. So I'm expecting that expense to raise. So that's my concern with the reduction in the, other professional services, which is a reduction of $150,000. I did speak on medical. We should know better sometime, hopefully next week, what the new rates will be. Those are the two major concerns that we have. I did notice that there's some things that have been taken out of our budget. I wasn't quite sure why they were in there in the beginning, such as even the professional snow removal. Some of those things, are they being consolidated so that it's distributed differently, or what? I don't know.
Anything further you'd like to present before we start delving into some of these questions?
No, I think that is about it.
Well, on a lighthearted note, I'd like to salute Administrator Ward for getting the memo and delivering on the bold citrus color this evening that Deirdre and Christopher and Melanie and Kathleen and Sakar and Mike are delivering. So, thank you.
If I knew yellow was going to be the color, I'd have done it properly. Okay.
You're in the family. You're in the color family. Thank you so much to you and the hardworking professionals that are part of the 50th District Court. I know council members have many questions. Councilman Rutherford?
Okay. First of all, thank you for your presentation. The administration cut out $150,000 out of professional services, correct?
Correct.
And so that's $50,000 for interpreter, $48,000 for cleaning services. And I want to know, isn't the reason why they're going to say that we have a surplus is because we have jobs that are not in place, and not that the courts actually have a surplus?
Probably.
That would be
that could be said. Mm-hmm. And I've expressed it in some of the meetings I've had in our subcommittee. It's like pulling teeth, mm-hmm. your own teeth, actually, mm-hmm. to get people to come in for these jobs. We have not only clerical positions that are not filled, we have a chief probation officer. Actually, Councilman Parker introduced us to a young man who came in, and we were all excited and happy, and he got offered more money elsewhere. and that's understandable. I had no hard feelings at him leaving at all. But my fear and my care is that the ones that we have, we're going to work them so hard mm-hmm. that we're going to start losing them. Mm-hmm. And we've got a couple that have several years in. Mm-hmm. It's like we are in a constant interviewing session, interviewing. It's amazing. We really don't want a whole lot. We want you to be able to pay attention to detail. We've done it through Indeed, and they have little tests that we can find out some things, like attention to detail, and if you can type 30 words a minute. A lot of people either don't take the test or they can't pass them.
And so my follow-up is, so we really don't have a surplus in the courts department. I guess that's to the administrator, because if we had all these jobs filled, would we have a surplus? If we didn't have them, do we actually have a surplus? That's my question to I yield to you to yield to the administration.
We'll
Thank you.
keep the speakers list going, but that question is lodged, and we'll revisit it if it doesn't get answered yet. Pro Tem Carrington, next on the speakers list.
Actually, I was going to actually commend you on reducing some of these things. I've assumed that you went through this budget thoroughly, but you're saying now that you necessarily didn't want to reduce these things that were in your original budget.
I submitted my suggestions, and it came back with this was what the administration was supporting.
Okay, all right. So I guess one of my concerns with the courts is getting things in the court on a timely manner. For example, when it comes to the tickets for blight that seem to get stuck sometime where we're not getting in the courts and getting them out in a timely manner. How is that particular one court working, or do you guys need to actually implement a second court? To handle some of the demand.
Judge will speak on this, but we've worked with our clerking staff to give these tickets immediate and special attention so that we can get them moving. But Judge will speak to that.
One of the reasons that those are moving fairly quickly once they get to us is that the code enforcement staff are putting the next court date on the ticket.
Okay.
Because we have a schedule where they know we're doing them every Monday afternoon. They know about how many slots they have. So those are getting scheduled. Now, we will tell what the time is, but between the time we get the ticket and the date is usually about 2 weeks.
Okay.
So it's a fairly close turnaround. That does not mean the matter is going to be resolved at the first ticket, at the first hearing, because there is a lot of time spent with the city attorney and the code enforcement staff meeting with the person who has received the ticket, and that all happens during that afternoon when code enforcement cases are being heard. And then there's a lot of follow-up. So there may be multiple hearings, but they're seen fairly quickly. And we have tweaked this over the past year since we've been doing it. And after every meeting, after every court session, we would go for another hour and just talk about, okay, what can we do? How can we tweak this a little better? Code enforcement staff has increased, and that has helped tremendously, even the support for code enforcement. So that's helped us process these cases.
Thank you. No further questions.
And I really want to commend you on that. It has been shared at the Law and the Court Subcommittee, and the code enforcement manager has really been emphatic about how generous with your overloaded and stretched thin time, personally, you, the chief judge of this district court, to make sure that the city's enhanced code enforcement action that is tackling the blight, that is cleaning up, that is working through sometimes extremely complex legal questions that involve, of course, people contesting those challenges, contesting the enforcement. You're tackling a lot, and it has been communicated to the City Council Subcommittee how effective that has been.
Well, thank you for that. I really did not envision just how complex some of those cases would be, because I was thinking the regular code enforcement cases, not the zoning issues and the more complex issues that take more time. But I have to say, our original, the target was for me to handle it until we get a system, worked out all the kinks. It was never my intention to keep all of those and have those on my docket. But it seems to work because there is some consistency. So for right now, it does work. At some point, and we have talked with code enforcement about, the city moving some of those into another hearing officer type, as opposed to them all coming to the court, but those discussions will be ongoing.
Thank you. Mayor Grimel, to that.
Well, just in a similar vein, I do, Chief Judge Walker, you in particular have allocated a lot of your docket to helping us tackle blight in the community, and I'm just so grateful to you personally for that. But obviously all three judges, obviously our court administrator, all of you do a Herculean job of really addressing some of the most pressing issues facing the community, and I'm very, very grateful for all of your dedication and hard work.
We feel supported by the city. We really do. We don't ask for a lot, but we try to budget in a way that we don't have to come back and ask for more things. So there's a significant amount. As I look through the activity that's listed on the spreadsheet through 6/30/24, I'm not sure what date the cutoff was, but especially in salaries and wages, you can see what's listed here is less than half of what was budgeted, and we're this far through the year. But that's because we've had these open positions. So I share Ms. Ward's concern about the current staff. And we've been talking about things that we need to do to perhaps work differently, because we're not the only business per se that is having a hard time hiring staff. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but we're working on that.
So it was mentioned that there were some things in the budget that you had sent over originally that were not kept when the mayor's office sent back their recommended budget, correct? Correct. What are some things that you would say are some more important or larger things that you would have hoped got funded for the court that you think are very relevant to what you're trying to do at 50th District?
Most of these items would come under other professional services. One of the problems that we have is way back when the court changed case management systems in 2004, records were not rolled into the new system. So we have to maintain these files because there is no other record of them. And that's taken up a lot of space. We did work with a vendor at one point to try to build us some more space, but that kind of went by the wayside. But when I look at we could use bathrooms that look a little better. I actually walked through with Larry last week, and the new or temporary head of his department, and showed them in our clerk's office, there are 2 bathrooms. They're gross. They're horrible. It wouldn't take much. It would take maybe, when I talked to him to give me a ballpark figure, he said it would take he thinks it would take about $5,000 each. They're very small rooms, a toilet, a sink, a mirror, and so there are these little things that we've kind of looked away from because we had so many other pressing things that we were trying to get done.
So thank you for that. The other question that I have, which is very much related to things that you probably still need, how is the HVAC situation at the courthouse and the Wi-Fi situation at the courthouse? I can see that my favorite judge has now dropped her arms to her side. And so I'm assuming, based on that, that the answer is you're still in need of HVAC improvements, that you're still in need of better internet at the courthouse, and just in general, modernizing our courthouse to be efficient and more effective than you've already been doing with all the constraints that you've already had. Would that sound fair in terms of what I'm saying?
That's a very, very fair way of putting it. It took me a little longer to get over here today because I think we may need more bandwidth or whatever. We're getting a lot of circling. You know, I push a button for something to go and that blue circle just goes and goes and goes and it eventually goes. I actually looked back through some of my old emails before I came over here today, and I can find where I started asking for the Wi-Fi back when Nevis Navarco was here. And I think Frank Anton was the IT person. And it got pushed here, pushed there, but it is really, really important for the court. We try to make it convenient for people by having the Zoom sessions. Well, some people are not really up on Zoom. I had to commend one of our security officers the other day because an older person came in and they had a case that was on Zoom, but they couldn't get their phone to work really well. And he did as much as he could, but without having Wi-Fi, we have prosecutors and defense attorneys who come into the building to try to connect with the court, and it's like dead zone. Some of the prosecutors, they were complaining because they were having to bring their own jetpacks or use their own telephones to try to conduct their court business. So that is something that we all want so very, very much. I know at one point, there are a couple of things that need to be wired, and it just hasn't happened.
One final follow-up. And I guess this one is towards the administration. In trying to solve the HVAC and Wi-Fi situations, would that budget be the one that we are actively discussing, or would it be in a different line item for a different department?
It would be in a different line item. It would be in the capital improvement fund, and we do have capital improvement funds planned for the HVAC. You did hear the court administrator say that Mr. Robinson and Mr. England were over there. They were over there walking through to look at all of the different things that could be done in a short time frame so that we could try and get that done yet this fiscal year.
I apologize, Michael.
Can I add one thing on that?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can I add one thing? Do you mind?
Yeah.
On the repairs, those types of things for the court, I did get an email just this week asking if we would entertain or allow them, contractors to access the building on the weekends, which is fine, but I asked, what is the cost for that? And it's 1.5 times the regular cost. So there are things that we're going to have to just figure out how they're going to work, because they can't be doing banging while we're actually in court, because that has an impact. And if we have someone in on the weekends, we have to make a decision. If they're going to be in the more confidential spaces, we have to have a court officer there. But the HVAC is working today. The Wi-Fi is more of a hot button issue with the judges, just so you know.
So I would just say, because this was a thing that had been brought up when we first all came on the council, and I took over the committee that I still am over now when it comes to Wi-Fi and IT. So at the next meeting, we will be discussing this further, because this is a priority. We are now 3 years in. We've been talking about Wi-Fi endlessly, and if we're expecting the courts to do their job of actually prosecuting and defending people properly, especially if we're having Zoom meetings, since we've not moved away from them, we're going to probably keep moving in this direction. We have to address it. So I'd say that this is a priority for our budget, because I don't want to keep seeing my favorite judge stand there sadly because we're not doing what we need to do, not just for her and for her employees, but for every resident that has to go through 50th District. So I just want to really put that in front of my colleagues and the mayor's office, that that is a priority, is getting those things figured out ASAP.
Thank you. Councilwoman James.
Yes, my question is, did we not, and I guess it's more for administration, did we include the 50th District Court when we did the wage study? Were they included, their employees included in the wage study?
Yes, you have the floor, Deputy Mayor.
All right. The short answer is no. The long answer is we did include the courts. We did not get the, we were not able to get the comparative data that we needed. So we are going to circle back around to that. Additionally, unlike the vast majority of the city of Pontiac, the court employees, which the administrator was referring to, are actually unionized employees, and all of their wages are negotiated. There had already been a negotiation of that contract. To the court administrator and the chief judge's credit, they actually went to the union and suggested some very, very specific changes in the contract to give wage increases to the positions where they were having trouble holding onto individuals, and the union was not open to that.
The union was not open to increasing
to specific increases. They wanted an across-the-board increase as opposed to increasing the specific positions that were having trouble retaining positions.
Okay.
Councilman
Okay.
Rutherford. Oh, I'm sorry, you still
Well,
going?
I just wanted to say, so we are going to do a wage study for the 50th District Court.
So again, we attempted to do it at one point in time. We did not get the data that we needed, so we will revisit that again.
Okay. And then one other clarification is that on the Wi-Fi, that you do have, because you have Zoom, you do have a hardwire, I believe you told me, hardwired Wi-Fi, but you don't have wireless.
Correct.
Okay.
The county came in several years ago and set us up with the Polycons, and we are wired, but we're not wireless.
You're not wireless, okay.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rutherford.
I have two questions. It's all the same. On Tuesday, we gave them more money, $60,000 to the HR department to use them for recruiting. And then we also have hired Gov HR to help do with recruiting for special positions. So my question to the administration, are we using Gov HR or the lady that we just gave a $60,000 extension to recruit for how many jobs you said we currently have open?
We have, I believe, 7 clerks. We have deputy court administrator, a chief probation officer. We will have a probation officer because she's also retiring this year. And with the caseload increasing, we might need at least a part-time probation officer.
Okay, so that's my first question. My second question is in building and facilities, last year, we talked about replacing or repairing the air conditioning system. What has been done, and is that budgeted for it to actually be repaired or replaced in this fiscal year? So I yield to the speaker, so you can yield to.
What was voted on Tuesday night at City Council was for an extension of up to $60,000 for HRAA. It did not incorporate recruitment. It was for dealing with the sort of insurance and pooled services. So the first question to the administration is, what's the strategy for recruitment support of the 50th District? Because obviously within their general ledger account numbers, there isn't an appropriate count per se, unless that would be an additional other professional service that you would expect to be charging to them. How does that shake out? What's been the track record so far? And what further action from City Council is necessary to make sure that the 50th District Court can recruit for the crucial positions?
Thank you, Council President. I do not believe that there is any further action needed from City Council. The court can speak better to what I'm about to say, but the court and the city's HR department have been in communications about moving more of the court's HR activities over to the city's HR department. That would include recruitment, that would include management of benefits. A final resolution has not been worked out yet, but we have been working on moving those services over so that we can better service the court in those needs, as we actually have individuals who are dedicated to that activity and the courts do not.
Thank you for that information. We'll continue to follow up. Councilman Rutherford asked what has come up also from Councilman Parker in Law and the Courts again and again. Can you give a status update to the community on the heating and cooling substantial concerns for the facility of the 50th District Courthouse?
As you heard the Chief Judge say that today the AC is actually working, so Mr. England and Mr. Robinson have been at the courts. They found some things that they could do to get the system up and running, but additionally, we will be coming forward to City Council in the near future with a request to make some further upgrades to the AC units that are there. It is I will call it a Band-Aid fix, because it does replace some of the individual units that are there, as opposed to the much, much larger multi-million-dollar fix, which would replace the whole system. But it is a temporary solution that will get us through the next couple of years while we determine what our long-term strategy is for that building.
Thank you. Thank you. Amen. Councilman Parker, followed by Councilman James.
I think my question is probably more for administration. So as we're addressing it, I thank God that the HVAC is cooling, but I also understand the problem is more so on the winter side of it where it doesn't heat properly and some is cool and some is not. You have to run it fast. So as they're putting their Band-Aid fixes, will it also address some of those issues? I yield to the.
You've been yielded to.
Yes. I believe that the answer to that is yes. I will verify for you, though.
Okay. And the other question is, I know there was an issue with the prisoner entrance in the stairs. Did they look at, and I mean,
Fix those?
I hope they fixed those by now.
I don't think, have they fixed those? I don't ever come up there.
There was a fix to make them safer.
I hear a but.
I don't want to make it so personal. In a perfect world, I would love to see those steps ripped out and something that is less steep. But that's part of the evaluation of the long term, you know, what's going to happen with the building long term, what's going to happen with the location long term. So, but yeah, for those of us who are aging, the steps have been fixed to where they're not dangerous. I'll say that.
And my last question, I recall a few months back, we were talking about upgrading your computer systems, and I remember we talked about that briefly at one of our meetings. Has that been accomplished, or portions of that been accomplished?
There have been new laptops within the past 6 months. The judges got new laptops in the courtroom.
Okay.
And some technology enhancements. You know, we now have 2 monitors. Judge Bowie could probably handle 3 because he's much more tech savvy than all of us. But there have been some improvements. I'm not sure about in the clerk's office. No computers, no. But are they having trouble with the ones?
We've replaced anything that broke down, but nothing updated.
Okay, so it's in progress.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman James.
Okay, I want to go back to the budget, the line item for other professional services, where we seem to have a discrepancy between what the administration has recommended and what you're requesting. Was your request the $350,000?
It was.
Okay, so the court requested $350,000 under other professional services, and the administration's recommendation put that down to $200,000.
Correct.
Okay. Could I ask for clarification from the administration as to why that was reduced?
Yeah, so I see that in 21-22, other professional services clocked in at $220,000. Last fiscal year, it clocked in at $255,000. What the activity is so far this fiscal year that's been booked is $146,000. And so what is currently in this year's budget, it's amended to be $350,000. And now in the mayor's proposed budget, it's $200,000. Any additional reflections from the administration? And then Councilwoman James will be able to have follow-up questions, but Deputy Mayor Stevens, an answer to her question.
Thank you, Council President. So as Council President noted, currently we have $146,000 approximately spent in that line item. The administration went through, looked at all of the activity, and made a suggestion of $200,000. We did not receive feedback from the court saying that that number was insufficient, and so that is the number that went forward in the budget. We do not have a problem with, as Chief Judge said, we really do try to support the courts with what they need, and so had we received that feedback, we would have moved that number.
Madam Administrator and Madam Chief Judge, if you want to submit to the City Council, including our Law and the Court Subcommittee, about what your anticipation is for how that would be broken down, you know, where that $350,000 would be utilized, anticipated, that would be very helpful as we make that final decision.
Absolutely.
Of where to land on that number. Do you anticipate for the rest of this fiscal year, in the remaining 6-7 weeks, more, I should say, in the last few weeks and in the 7 weeks to come, because obviously there's been a few weeks since this number was arrived at, do you expect that it'll be eaten into further in terms of what this current year's budget is
I
for
was
that.
very surprised at that number, and I actually ran a couple of reports. I didn't get a chance to go through all of them, but that was a very surprising number,
Okay. All right, we'll ask for-
especially looking at our history coming down.
Okay.
So,
We'll ask the finance department to help us drill down further into that and to see what's, what would be the reflection of that as everything gets booked. Councilwoman Rutherford?
Just a point of information, ma'am, how much did you guys spend on interpreters last year, just interpreters alone?
I believe last year it was again, almost $50,000.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
And-
and like I said, I'm expecting any time for them to ask for more.
Okay, thank you.
And so that's something that's consistently been under other professional services for how you
Yes.
operate. That's an other professional services expense. Obviously, that's essential to your operation and
Absolutely.
to meet the legal requirements that are placed on you by the state of Michigan, but also the best practice so that everyone has access to justice regardless of their spoken
Exactly.
language. So city council will, of course, want to make sure that you have the resources to deliver on that.
Thank
So if we're looking at your department's estimated revenues, it looks like it's mapped over pretty evenly in terms of where we expect the coming year to be and where we expected this fiscal year to be. Any noteworthy items in terms of drastic change with money coming in? So state aid for judges' wages, that looks like somewhat stable, et cetera, that not many people want to get married at the district court? Not many fees generated there?
Not since COVID.
Not since
And
COVID?
the rate is still $10 for a wedding. It's been that since probably the 50s.
So Pontiac lovebirds, if you wanted to tie the knot in the very chilled or very warm 50th District Court in Pontiac's historic downtown, that is an option for Pontiac residents.
That's great information.
But is there anything that you'd like the council and the community to know about, any deviations or changes with money coming in that the district court is expecting?
One of the positions that I forgot to mention was a collections person.
Oh, okay.
We are supposed to have one. Judge and I were talking about trying to configure a position to be able to do that and also help with some of the other reporting items. So yes, we do need a collections person. So I do expect that by the time next year, this time we should have more. My fingers are crossed.
Okay. A follow-up question on revenue, Councilwoman Rutherford is flagging. What would be examples of fines for traffic violations? Because obviously that's a substantial line item. That does not reference parking violations. That has a separate revenue source. But what would traffic violations be?
You mean typically what a fine would be?
Or what are some instances of what would be a traffic violation that often has a fee associated with it that the district court would be getting?
Civil infraction cases. So running a stop sign, failing to have proof of insurance on you. Those are things that carry fines. But those fines don't go 100% into this fund because there's a portion of those fines that go to the state to fund a whole lot of things. Libraries, legislative retirements, the jail systems. There's a whole lot of things that go into that. So, for example, for a $150 fine on a civil infraction, a good portion of that goes elsewhere.
Thank you. Councilman Parker, did you still have a hand?
I recall there was also, even though we may have increased your workload in regards to code enforcement, do we get in a push all of that money? Do we get all of that?
That goes back to the city. I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the municipal civil infractions, I think the fines go to the city. Still $100 for a first offense, $300 for a second, and $500 for every offense after that, for the same thing.
And that's a very important point the judge made, because it depends on how a ticket is written that determines where the money goes. If it's written strictly as an ordinance civil infraction, then all the money comes to the city. If it's a state matter, then that's when it gets broken down to all these little pieces that go to here, there, and the other where. And I actually took a look, I think it was at last year's numbers, and although we brought in over $2,500,000, I think, after our expense and what we gave to the city, actually there was like $627,000 that goes out to support other functions in the state's government. So it's a big chunk of money.
My question, how long have you been in service to the city of Pontiac?
Here, 15 years. 15, yes.
The city of Pontiac is grateful to you, and I hope that as long as you're professionally going and still up for the challenge, we are honored for your continued service. Thank you very much, Administrator Ward.
Thank you so very much.
We understand that there have been very trying circumstances in your field, in that facility, in the carrying out of justice. This is no small feat. The Indigent Defense Grant, MIDC, has that been working well? That's obviously a very beneficial funding, external funding source, but is that interfacing with the courts well? Is there anything further the council and the community needs to know for making sure that is implemented and going well for the residents?
That is going extremely well.
Okay.
It is managed very well. Because it's a large chunk of money that comes in to support attorneys for people who cannot afford it, which is a pretty large chunk of our population. The fact that everyone now has an attorney at the arraignment, which is the first hearing, and the attorneys get to explain their rights. And that may not be the same attorney that they have going later on the case, but once an attorney is assigned at the pretrial date, that attorney stays with the case throughout. That is very well managed. When it first started, the Michigan Indigent Defense Standards came down, and Pontiac started, and that position was filled with the same person who's in it now. Pontiac was the model for a lot of the other courts in the state, the way it was created. And keep in mind, indigent defense keeps changing the rules because they come down with standards that everybody has to comply with. So it changes and makes the record keeping that they do a little more complicated over time, because as the standards change, they also have to change how they're managing the attorneys, how the attorneys are billing. But the fact that we don't have to do it is wonderful. It's all handled through indigent defense. And one of the goals of that was to make it independent from the judiciary so that judges were not appointing the attorneys. Now there's a separate entity that appoints them. But now one of the standards is requiring that they balance the caseloads between the attorneys. So it's a lot of paperwork. They're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you for that very valuable insight. I have a question when it comes to the ownership or the placement of janitorial services fees for this city facility. I can see that there was an account that demonstrated how that would be utilized by the district court. It looks like that has changed. What's the vision? Has there been some dramatic departure? And what should we interpret it to mean in terms of the variations of where or how the costs of cleaning the district court are kept? Where are they utilized through? Is it different fund, different department? What should we anticipate when we're assessing the budget? Deputy Mayor?
So the janitorial services should be coming out of the line, contractual janitorial services. So far to date, $33,000, almost $34,000 has been spent on janitorial services with a total amount budgeted of $51,000.
And Administrator Ward, has it been your experience that sometimes that is booked instead to other professional services since you flagged that? Or because I show that what is in this year's budget of $51,000 is also what's we're looking at for the current recommended budget for contractual janitorial services. I just want to make sure.
We pay the invoices that we get, and because it is a professional service, we don't have a janitorial service line or a line item or anything like that. That is the natural place where we would put it.
We'll just ask for, doesn't have to be tonight, but if the administration can confirm with the court administration to make sure that's being booked and tracked accordingly. Okay.
You know what?
So the 48,000, I guess, I'm a little confused.
That's
It-
more.
I may be, need to be corrected on that. It looks like there is a line item here that I'd never noticed before.
Well, you could do some digging and touch some base with the administration to make sure it's, the processing of the invoices lines up with the GL, so that way we're looking at like-for-like figures. So,
Okay, that-
looks like the annual amount, understanding might be the same. We just want to make sure when bills are being paid that it's hitting the right spot.
Absolutely.
So we're tracking like-for-like. Any final discussion or questions when it comes to the district court? The Honorable Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to address the misunderstanding about the surplus in the courts. If you go to the last page of the court's budget, you'll see where it says net of revenues appropriations fund 276. If we start in the year 2021-22, there was an ending fund balance of $456,113, meaning that in that year, the court received approximately $450,000 more than it spent. In the following year, the court received approximately $1.8 million more than it had spent. And so what we did, so that was 23, 24. And so the court as a fund has a surplus. This is the same situation that the city in general, the general fund has, right? We have a surplus. Now, the reason for the surplus is, of course, because the court was not able to hire all of the individuals that it wanted to hire. But the fact of the matter is there is more money sitting in the court's bank account than the court has been spending. And so what the administration suggested for this year was, instead of vastly overfunding the court, so sending more money again than the court was likely to be able to spend, we cut back the amount of money that we were sending to the court to use up some of the fund balance that was already in the court's budget or in the court's bank account.
We'll look at that further. Thank you for your perspective. Councilman Rutherford, anything further?
But if the jobs were filled, then the surplus wouldn't be there. That's what my original statement was. I'm just trying to make sure, because that's what I asked her. So would that not be correct, or would it not be? Am I just mistaken by that?
My understanding is it would be correct. Our numbers are going to go higher as far as labor and.
Okay, thank you.
City Council, I really appreciate your perspective, and we'll be reviewing this further as we contemplate budgetary amendments.
And that's because in recent years, the city has been sending more money to the court from our general fund than has been needed. And what the deputy mayor is saying is that, yes, to the extent that some of these positions are filled during the coming year, there'll be more expenditures in the court, but that the existing district court fund balance can be utilized to fund those positions for the coming year. Is that accurate?
Okay. Final discussion at this stage. Thank you very much for your time this evening, your very valuable time that's gone obviously much further than the standard workday hours. So for the community's benefit and this honorable body's benefit, the budget hearings have concluded with our special meetings that have taken place in May, but there will be multiple hearings of the budget. And during that process, council members will obviously research, review, and amend the budget before ultimately adopting it well in advance of the state mandated deadlines for submission. The fiscal year ends June 30th, and the budget of the city of Pontiac for this coming fiscal year will be adopted in advance of that to meet all required deadlines. But so the first city council meeting where you would see the readings of the budget is anticipated to be Tuesday, June 4th, and a second reading would be Tuesday, June 11th, and then if necessary, a third reading on the 18th. So just those, the city council regular meetings in June would be when the budget will be further reviewed and amended with multiple readings. So it's been very instructive for us to have the respective departments and hear firsthand about their perspectives. We are now at public comment. The first request is Veronica Taylor.
First, I honor God, who's the head of my life. I would like to thank this council, and I'm here representing the MDP voter protection people for the state of Michigan, and as them saying, for the elector, for our office, for the city of Pontiac, they have planted me here to make sure that everything get did. What I want to bring to you all attention is that our clerk Doyle has been doing a marvelous job here in there. As before, when we had the former mayors and stuff, things was not accurately put in place. Now, since it's now with this administration, a lot of things have improved and everything is coming full circle. And as me going from in there talking with them and reporting back to the MDP as the voter protection woman, it is doing a marvelous job. And I just want to commend this body, this honorable body here, for helping the clerk with everything that we are doing to get things did as the MDP voter protection, to make sure our elected officials things are getting did, where our stuff is getting out to our community to get elected in office and getting necessary things they need. I would like to thank you on behalf of the MDP.
Next up is Dr. Deirdre Waterman. Followed by Darlene Clark.
I'd like to start by saying that as I heard Judge Walker and the Court Administrator Lynette Ward talk about some of the deficiencies of funding at the court, it made me channel back to 20 or 30 years when Judge Waterman was talking about some of the same issues. So this has been going on for quite a while, including that HVAC system, which has been notorious. So I hear their concerns. But this is the last of the public budget hearings, I understand. So I had asked Deputy Mayor about getting some specific itemized areas of the revenue, which isn't in the copy we got here, and he wanted me to give him the specific areas that we needed those. So I brought those. I will also email them to you, but I'll give them to you publicly. Federal grants, 501, which is on the pie chart, this is number. State grants, 539, and other revenue, 671, because it's all lumped in one amount on the copy we were given. I'm just asking for the itemized so we can check for specific ones. I know that's just a push of a button to get that, but if you want me to FOIA it, I will, but I just won't email that to you. The other thing is, I brought up at the last council meeting, I believe, and before, was there's a level of spending here that is burning through pretty quickly the fund balance, because, there was a certain fund balance that I left in administration. And as you look at what's happening to the fund balance, there is, it's going to be decreasing pretty rapidly over the next 3 years. So I know, President McGinnis, that I brought this up at the last council meeting. You attempted to explain that to the some of the delegates that were here. But I'm going to point you again to make the point I was making to, I think it's page 145 and 146 of the budget that was posted from the mayor's recommended budget. And you will see at the level of spending that you're doing now, right now, the fund balance is predicted to be at a certain level at the end of each year. But in 3 years, it'll then be, instead of a positive fund balance, it will be negative, and I think the number I saw on there was negative 50,000 or something like that. That's a problem, okay? And right now, I'm not hearing you really adjust that so that there should always be money left in the rainy down fund, so you're not continually going into the more and more into the deficit. So I just ask you to look at that. And also, I would like to see if the various district funds, they haven't been itemized. Can the districts get an audit of exactly what was spent for their amounts? Because a lot of activities that they want to do, they just don't know that the money is there to do that. So I would also ask for that.
Darlene Clark.
Someone left their glasses. One of my many pairs. You're welcome. Good afternoon, council and administration. The concern that has been brought up on a weekly basis at the council meeting is that, and you actually confirm, your legal team representative, she actually confirmed a lot of things that the public sees, whether you believe that or not. And I say the public, the people from for a lot of states that's looking at this. Council, she says that she needs someone to overlook the contracts that the cities are entering into. She has a work overload. And being an attorney, having a work overload doing by yourself is not an easy task because you have so many, you pulled in so many directions and you're not giving its full attention that it really needs. Council, once again, let me tell you this. At all your council meetings, you truly need someone sitting at that chair to give you advice and to help you to put the brakes on things so you can't move forward or move too fast and making decisions that's not benefit to the public. And with that being said, I think she confirmed it very well for us tonight and to the public. Also, I'd like to commend Judge Walker. Judge Walker has actually been in our family. Well, we have known her for a lifetime. But I'm speaking now as a business person. The courthouse, as you have said, was the heart of the foundation for the city of Pontiac. She has pushed that she doesn't understand why she can't keep staff. I've been to a lot of courthouses. Actually, I've been to every courthouse in the state of Michigan. But recognize this, you're not keeping your staff because so much is the fee or they're getting paid more. But the condition that these judges have to work on is not very up to date with the rest of the courthouses. The outside conditions, the seating conditions, the tools that they have to work with speaks volume of the capability that they can show to the public what the quality that they are, which is shortcutting them as a professional judge. By having them work in every day in that condition, it shows the public that their strength is not as good as it seemed or need to be. Representation is the best thing in any, especially in a law, that you can give to show your strength as to who you are. When you are on top of your game, that means you are ahead of it to present and for the judges to be strong and solitary and coming together. Give them what they need. Give them what they need and not look at the way you see it. They need the conditions of the tools to work at that courthouse. But first, they need to be walking into space that's quality of their capabilities.
Thank you. With that, that concludes public comment, and that concludes this evening's agenda. We'll now entertain a motion to adjourn, but I do want to just emphasize happy birthday again to the Honorable Kathleen James this week. You don't look it, you don't act it. I hope you don't feel it. God bless you and happy birthday. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? It's moved by Councilwoman Rutherford, seconded by Councilwoman James. Hearing no discussion, roll call, Deputy Clerk, on adjournment.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
4 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:16 p.m. Have a safe and beautiful night.